Subnautica is a game that was developed and published by a studio named Unknown Worlds and is situated in San Francisco. At first, they were known for their video game series Natural Selection, and before that were known as Half-Life Modders. This small indie development team grew throughout the years, and on December 17th, 2013, they announced their brand new game, Subnautica. This game was heavily influenced by Minecraft and was originally going to be a purely exploration game. As development went on, the game had an early access release on December 16th, 2014, and for the next few years they would slowly update this early access build as progress on development was being made. During this, many YouTube content creators tried the game, which boosted the game's popularity drastically, and finally on January 23rd, 2018, Subnautica was fully released on PC, with console versions coming later that year, and next-gen versions releasing recently on May 14th, 2021 with Subnautica Below Zero. Subnautica is a game I was unsure about before I had played it. In fact, I didn't get around to finally giving it a shot until December of last year, only a half a year ago. I wasn't sure if I was going to like the game from what I had seen. I have friends who talked about the game sometimes, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to try it out, because of the good things they were saying about it. After I finished the game though, I was pleasantly surprised by it. I did not think I would enjoy this game as much as I did. In fact, I enjoyed the game so much that it quickly became one of, if not my favorite survival-based game I have ever played. But how come? How did this somewhat basic concept for a survival game was able to captivate me and have such a big impact on me? To answer this, we are going to have to go deeper and dissect this game to find out. Without further ado, let's dive into the world of Subnautica. The game starts off with our main protagonist, Riley Robinson, entering a life pod and leaving a spaceship that has exploded. After getting knocked out, he wakes up with a fire in his life pod and quickly puts it out. Now at first, after the fire is put out, you'll probably head up the ladder and get a stunning yet horrifying view of the crashed ship our character just escaped out of. And with that, you take your first dive into the water-infested alien planet. The first thing you would probably do in the water is grab a bunch of these weird-looking mushrooms on the ground, and then later drop all of it because you realize your idiocracy. You'll probably go around grabbing anything that is interactable, maybe getting some titanium and copper and other nearby resources. Then you go back to your life pod and realize you can use this built-in fabricator to craft you all sorts of stuff. Maybe you'll craft a better oxygen tank and a scanner tool. Then with your new scanner tool, you'll realize you can scan all sorts of stuff and just scan everything you can until you suddenly get a brand new blueprint. Wondering what it is, you go back to your life pod, figure out what's needed to craft, then go out and find those materials, make the thing, repeat. Now, this seems like your basic survival type game. You gather resources, you make stuff, cook things, and survive. The difference here, though, is that this game gives you all sorts of cool things to make that fit in this watery wasteland around you. The progression is so satisfying in this game. You go around and collect new materials and stuff to craft, and you go back to craft them, and it really starts to feel like you make progress fast, and things start to get more and more convenient for you. Like, for example, you eventually get a sea glider, which allows you to swim much faster while holding it, which allows you to do things easier. It's super satisfying once you understand how it all works. You start to find new areas, shipwrecks, all sorts of things. You really feel like you're trying to explore and survive this uncharted world you now live in. Now, what I just described is what an average person would most likely do in their first playthrough. Or they'll find it utterly boring and just go back to playing their COD or Fortnite or whatever. Whatever, those people don't deserve to bask in this amazing game anyway. Now, as you progress through the game, maybe get some decent equipment, maybe have a sea moth and good food and water, you get a repair tool and fix your life pod and radio up. You start to get these radio messages telling you how long you'll be stranded out here.
Aurora, distress signal received. Rescue operation will be dispatched to your location in 9 hours.
And pre-recorded messages from other survivors that survived the explosion and crash landed on this planet with you. You start to get to their signals and head to these areas, only to find their life pods destroyed, some fragments, and equipment along with their last recorded messages. This is around the time when you truly feel isolated and alone, since you seem to have been the only survivor of this incident. That is, until you get this recorded message from a ship called the Sunbeam, who is coming to help you and sends the coordinates for the landing site. Eager and with no time to waste, you head there. You find that the landing site is on an island with a huge mountain. You patiently wait for the sunbeam while wondering what the hell that weird looking building is in the distance. As the clock reaches zero, you see the building start shifting to what appears to be a cannon shape, and you see the sunbeam in the distance. You think you're about to be rescued until...
Just the full.
Boom! The sunbeam gets obliterated by the cannon. Seems like you will be here for longer than you thought. Now, this is one of the ways Subnautica presents its story to you, and it's awesome. Having these story segments and key locations to go is a great way to know when and how you progress through the story, and it's honestly nothing I've ever seen from a survival game. It really makes you question what is really going on with this planet, what is that building, and why did it shoot down the sunbeam? As you explore the open world of Subnautica, you will find and discover all sorts of little hints and secrets that uncover more about the lore of the game. Reading and listening to logs and research experiments and what is really going on is another way the game greatly tells a story to you and what your main goal is. It is so awesome and really motivates you to keep playing to figure out what happens next. This is where the story of the game shines the brightest. Now, I'm not going to continue going through what happens next, as I really feel like you should experience it when you play the game yourself. But just know that the story and the way it presents itself is awesome. So as I said before, you spend a lot of your time gathering resources, exploring, and building up your survivability on this dangerous planet. The progression is great in this game, and it all depends on how well you explore the world and how deep you are willing to go. Exploring farther out deeper rewards you with better materials and better blueprints to make better stuff. While you're doing this, you pretty much have your basic survival mechanics like oxygen, health, food, and water, if you're playing on survival anyway. And although I don't really have a problem with any of these mechanics since it's just basic survival stuff, getting water can be annoying considering how fast the bar for it drains. But of course, there are ways to make water crafting easier, so it's not that big of a deal. Progression in this game just flows so damn well, and you naturally grab the resources you need as you explore more of the world. However, I will admit that the game isn't the most casual friendly, as it rarely holds your hand or helps you figure out where things are. You'll most likely have to look up some things while you play, but if you're patient, then this won't be frequent. However, as much as I love the progression, I have a major issue with it, mainly during the second half of the game. I feel like the game at this point gets a bit too grindy for my liking. Like, it gets to a point where the game asks so much of you and it gets pretty overwhelming and pretty obnoxious sometimes. Like, for example, I absolutely hate the way you have to get enameled glass because you have to go to a kelp biome, find a stalker, and wait until it bites and grabs the metal salvage on the ground for a chance to get a stalker tooth, which you need for enameled glass. You need to do this quite a bit in this game, and not only can this process be annoying as hell depending on how lucky you get, but this can also take either a few minutes or a few hours sometimes. Like, at this point, you might as well stab yourself in the chest, and I bet you would still have a higher probability of surviving that than getting a stalker tooth. Now, this is really the only material that is this obnoxious to get, but some other materials can be a bit annoying because of how biome specific they are and how much space they take up in your inventory. Like blood oil, for example. And to get the late game ores, you have to go pretty deep, and unless you want to spend more time making a second base down there, going from point A to point B can be absolutely time consuming and boring. The end of the game just drags on at that point where you have to make the hatching enzymes in the Neptune rocket. Even though the game does make it easier to get the materials for the hatching enzymes using the 4 portals you can open, it can still take a little while on your first playthrough. The Neptune rocket can suck so much depending on how much material you have. Like, if you do not have any of the endgame ores with you, looking at you, crystalline sulfur, that means you have to make a trip all the way back down and then go all the way back up again. You most likely would have to do this in your first playthrough since you wouldn't know that you need more of this stuff. Plus, in general, there is so much stuff that you need for the rocket that it is tiring to grind for. The tablets can also be a bit of a pain since, again, you will have no clue what ones you will need and how much you'll need. Overall, the progression in this game is great, but the end game could be way better when it comes to it. Now, eventually you will realize that this life pod won't be useful for much longer as storage space becomes more and more of an issue. This is about the time you start building your very own habitat, basically your base. With your habitat builder and the fragments you have scanned, mainly from the second island, you can build rooms and all sorts of things in these rooms with your materials. You, of course, are also going to need a power source for it, which you can find multiple fragments for throughout the world. You can put all the lockers and decorations in your base as you want, and you can really build your base wherever you want as long as you have space. You can even build it in the dead zone if you're a psychopath. The base building is honestly pretty fun in this game and can be pretty time consuming if you care about making a good layout and having good decoration. I personally didn't care too much about it in my first playthrough, but I definitely have more respect for it now and enjoy it a lot more. You can make a lot of cool and useful rooms in your base. Like for example, you can make a scanner room which allows you to scan the area for a certain material you are looking for, and with the cameras you can go and search for these and it will highlight for you. You can also upgrade it too, making it scan faster, scan at farther distance, and even making the highlights appear on your HUD so you don't need to use the cameras, which is just super useful. You also have the moon pool, which allows you to dock your vehicles and have them recharge. And if you make the vehicle upgrade station, you could even customize your vehicle, which is cool. As awesome as base building is, it is pretty buggy and finicky in the game. It can be pretty annoying to be honest, as sometimes it won't connect to your base or will say that you can't put it there for no reason. But this is pretty easy to look past. There might be moments in the game where you may make multiple bases, although this isn't required at all, but it's definitely an option if you need to relocate to a deeper biome with better materials, fragments, etc. Overall, base building is great in this game, and honestly, I find it better than most survival games out there. I mean, with how quickly you can get a base started, it honestly is pretty satisfying to pull it off and make a really cool looking base. And you won't have to spend like 20 minutes making your base like in other survival games out there. And for someone like me who's lazy and doesn't want to spend so long making one base, I greatly applaud the game for this. Now, Subnautica's map is huge. I mean, it is so easy to get lost at times, and sometimes makes me wish it wasn't as big as it is. Like, it can take a while to cross the map. However, you can use a beacon to mark key locations and biomes so you know where to go, so it isn't so bad. Subnautica's map is separated by all sorts of different biomes, and most of them are pretty cool and useful to go to. You will see all sorts of cool set pieces and areas in the game. There's always something cool to see in these areas, and it makes you really feel like an explorer discovering all sorts of cool landforms and flora. Some of my favorite biomes and areas include the Grand Reef, the Blood Kelp, inside the Aurora, Lost River, and lava zones. This game is absolutely gorgeous, and there is so much stuff to awe at, and it just makes for a great experience when you first uncover these areas. Like the Lost River is such a well done biome. It is one of the first biomes that require you to go deeper than you've ever gone before in game. Not only is the pressure of going deeper hitting you at this point, but this is where you find and explore a lot of cool things like a very huge skeleton, the disease facility, the tree cove, etc. It just fits so well and feels so natural and has you wanting more. In this same way, presenting the atmosphere of the game and these biomes persist for a majority of the game. From the very start of the game, you get a sense of a very eerie and also melancholy atmosphere. During the night, however, the game feels like an outright horror game at times, especially when you're in dangerous territory. The way the game presents itself to the player is absolutely phenomenal, as it can have you feel so many things at once and it's all natural. Of course, you will need to venture into these places to get better materials and equipment and to finish the game, but it's really up to you if you want to do that in the first place. However, I have one major issue with the map, and that is two biomes, the dunes and the mountains. My issue with them is that they are pretty much just filler and take up a large chunk of the map. It kinda sucks because they may have useful stuff in them, but they also are the most dangerous areas in the game due to the abundance of leviathans in them. This means you will never want to go to them at all, and are pretty much just a blur on the map. They're also pretty generic looking, as again, they basically serve no purpose. I really wish they just took the time to make these places actually cool looking biomes like the ones that they had for concept arts. Some of these would make an appearance in Below Zero. Like, you'd think the crash site would be the same way, considering how it's just a normal looking place but with a huge crashed ship in the middle, which actually makes it a cool place on its own, but whatever. You then realize you can go inside the ship and explore deep into it, finding all sorts of food, water, fragments, etc. You can even go in and repair the Anyway, you can go in and even repair the Aurora and get rid of the radiation that was surrounding the place. This is one of my favorite set pieces in the game. It's so cool exploring the whole thing and is what makes the biome unique. The dunes and mountains have nothing cool about them and are just gray and boring. Other than those two areas, all the biomes are great. I mean, some better than others, still great though. Going deeper is as terrifying as it sounds, and of course, you're going to need certain equipment to get to these areas. This is where your vehicles come in. Now, the vehicles in this game are implemented into the progression system so well and all have their own functions, and are just pretty awesome to use in general. The first vehicle you get is the Sea Moth, pretty much your basic mini submarine vehicle. It's mainly best for surface biome travel and it has great maneuverability and speed. Although it is pretty fragile and could take tons of damage too quickly, which I find annoying as hell to be honest. Like, why does running into a fish do as much damage as it does? What the hell? Other than that, it's just good old reliable for whenever you want to make quick expeditions for some materials you need. Although you do utilize it a lot in the early game. That is until you make what would typically be your next vehicle, the Cyclops. Now this thing is practically your big boy version of the Sea Moth. This thing is very big and very useful. It pretty much acts as your portable base, your home away from home. You can put pretty much everything you can put into a normal base, like lockers, radios, fabricators, chargers, etc. It can be pretty hard to navigate in small spaces, but that's why it even has its own vehicle dock for the other two vehicles, so you can get out and explore with those instead. It drives pretty slow though, so making long trips can take forever, which sucks. What is funny though is that when your Cyclops is on fire, it plays probably the best song in the soundtrack, which is so upbeat. It's like they want you to dance while your submarine is burning and you're gonna die. The next and last vehicle you would typically get is the Prawn Suit. It is as cool as it sounds. Pretty much a ground vehicle that is not only necessary for the end game, due to how deep you need to go, but is useful for all sorts of things once you get its drill and grapple upgrades. Being able to drill material deposits for a bunch of material is very helpful and useful, and in general, you feel like an absolute god using this thing. It is probably my favorite vehicle in the game because of how useful it is and how fun it is to use. These vehicles can be upgraded with all sorts of stuff. Like, all of them don't start off with much depth, but as you get better depth modules, the deeper you are able to travel. They also have things like the drill arm and grapple arm for the Prawn Suit, the Sea Moth sonar, which allows you to see what is ahead of you, and the Cyclops shield generator, which pretty much acts as a defensive maneuver against Leviathans. And many more. There are a lot of choices here for upgrades, which add some good replayability. You may think you are safe inside these vehicles, but this game is infested with a lot of sea creatures that want you dead. You're never truly safe in this game. You never know what is lurking deep in the ocean. There are all types of passive and aggressive fauna, like the basic fish you see all over the world, stalkers, sand shark, etc. But I mainly want to talk about the main attractions. First off is the Reaper Leviathan, which is easily the best one in the game. The Reaper is absolutely terrifying, dangerous, and makes you piss your pants. Everything surrounding the Reaper is phenomenal, and it is always intense hearing its roar in the distance while you slowly make your way to your destination. I honestly believe it is one of the scariest creatures in gaming, period. Next up, we have the Ghost Leviathans. Although not as scary as the Reapers, they are still very dangerous and will do massive damage to you and your vehicle if you're not careful. These guys are very cool with how at a distance they don't look much, but as you get closer, it starts to show its true colors with its glow. Suits the name pretty well. These creatures are also what inhabit the dead zone, making it even more terrifying. Now finally we have the Sea Dragon, which is one of my personal favorite Leviathans. This beast of a creature can literally breathe fire underwater, which is sick, and it will tear your prawn suit to shreds, so be careful. In general, the Sea Dragon is just so damn awesome and can be pretty scary at first. Now, I love all the aggressive Leviathans in the game, but my issue with them is that besides the Reaper, the other two aren't really that aggressive at all and kind of just swim in the background as you explore the place you're in. This makes them not as much of a threat as they appear to be. Now, I'm not saying they should be so aggressive that it's too difficult to traverse these areas, but at least make them aggressive enough to where you always need to have a good awareness of where you are in conjunction with the Leviathan. Honorable mentions for hostile fauna include the crab squid, which can launch an EMP attack, which disables the vehicle you're in for a short amount of time. They are pretty unique, and I always make sure to be careful around them. Next, we have the warpers, who can warp you out of your vehicle a short distance away and can also do some damage. These guys are pretty annoying sometimes, but are pretty cool due to their story significance. Next, we have the Now, this next one is not aggressive, but I just have to mention the Sea Emperor herself. I love how she is foreshadowed throughout the game. Again, amazing storytelling, and you finally get to see her, and she is massive. It's really cool when you first see her, and it's unfortunate what happens to her at the end. Now, there is more I could mention, but I am not trying to make this video any longer than it already is. As for the flora, well, I don't really have much to say about it other than it really helps flesh out some of the biomes, and some are even used for materials and farming. There is so much flora to scan that it's pretty impressive how much effort they put into making each of these PDA entries. Overall, the flora and fauna is just another thing that the game does to sell its atmosphere to you, and I love everything about him. The soundtrack for this game is phenomenal, hosting over 50 tracks that play throughout the game. Usually while you're playing, there is background music that plays, and each track perfectly fits the biomes that they play in. It also adds to the incredible atmosphere the game offers. As an example, hearing this while exploring the blood kelp can make the place very eerie and give you a very cautious feeling. The bass tracks that play while in the surface biomes are all great as well and perfectly represent Subnautica. Even the menu theme is oozing with tons of energy and I love it. Simon Chilinsky, the person who composed the soundtrack, did an amazing job making all of these amazing songs, and I recommend listening to them as they are very, very good for background music. In fact, I'm listening to the soundtrack while writing this script and probably while working on the actual video too. 10 out of 10 soundtrack. Now, despite all I have said about this game so far, there is one major issue with the game that puts it back quite a bit, and it is the technical issues. Now, this game is really, really buggy. Now, some of the stuff like frame rate, loading issues, and bugs can depend on the version you are playing. The PS4 version is pretty bad with loading issues and crashing issues. You can get stuck in a lot of spots, and you would be surprised how many times we've had to restart to the last save due to a crash or getting soft locks due to bugs and loading into a large piece of debris or through the floor. Now, on the PS5, the version I'm playing on for this review, the crashing and loading issues are basically non-existent, but it is still pretty buggy at times and suffers the same issues you other versions have. Other than that, the PS5 version was a pretty smooth experience frame rate wise, but overall, still a pretty buggy game. I recommend playing the game on PC since it seems to be the most patched version of the game, but that is not to say the console ports are bad, just a little more unstable in some areas. Now, if these bugs were fixed, then this game would have been such an easy 10 for me, but just because this game is extremely buggy and can break super easily, I kinda have to put it down a bit because of that. Subnautica is one of the greatest survival games ever made. Everything in this game seemed to have so much care put into it, from story to presentation to gameplay. It is such an amazing experience from beginning to end, and Unknown Worlds deserves all your love and support for making an incredible game. A few major things do hold it back though, like the endgame being tedious, the filler biomes, and the technical issues. But I'm willing to look past these issues as the positives very highly outweigh the negatives. This game is worth it for the atmosphere alone, and if you are a fan of survival games, then what the hell are you doing? Go buy this game and I guarantee you will have an awesome experience. After the success of this game, it was clear that a sequel was going to be made, and although it originally was going to be an expansion, we finally have that sequel, which is Subnautica Below Zero. I won't get to it immediately, but it is going to happen at some point. So if you like this, somehow, then I hope you enjoy that too. Subnautica is an absolutely phenomenal game, and I am so glad I played it when I had the chance. 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching my in-depth review on Subnautica. If for whatever reason you actually sat down and watched it, which I thank you if you did. Sorry for such a long wait from the last upload. I was kind of struggling with what video I wanted to do next, and also school caught up with me, so I'm currently still finishing that up. I do have some ideas in mind for future videos, so hopefully I can get some more out after I deal with school. I also would like to ask what you guys would like to see me do, because I want to try and make content that you guys would actually enjoy from me rather than just me doing my own thing. I have been considering maybe doing a few playthroughs possibly, and some dumb skits, but let me know what you guys would like to see me talk about or make a video on. If you guys would like to see me say very dumb stuff, then check out my Twitter, link is in the description, but be warned, Well, I guess that's all I have to say, so I'll see you guys later. Peace.
I'm dying. Help me.